Welcome to the many interpretations of Maiasaura. Maiasaura is a hadrosaurid that lived in North America during the late Cretaceous period. It also went extinct around 70 million years ago. I'm very excited for this one because, of course, I'm a huge fan of hadrosaurids in general. I think that they're criminally underrated dinosaurs that often get a bad rap in media. But Maiasaura in general, I'm very excited for because I think it's just a very fascinating dinosaur in general. Of course, it's very important for our understanding of dinosaurs and more specifically dinosaur parenting, but we'll probably talk a lot more about that as the video progresses. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Our first depiction comes from the dinosaurs. So we actually have a herd of them with a bunch of nests. They sport a sort of salmon coloration with like these yellow beaks, and overall they're pretty shrink wrapped. However, their skeletal structure seems to match up from what we would expect from Maiasaura. This is pretty much what we're looking for in terms of like Maiasaura head shapes and things like that. You got like a very blocky snout that dips down into a little bit of like a beak extension down here, and quite notably like this huge pronounced eyebrow because they had like an interesting crest-like structure in between their eyes, which is something that could have been used for headbutting, which is pretty cool. And you do see that here. You know, this does look like a Maiasaurus skull. You also have like a very interesting structure on top of its head. So overall, it's a pretty good start to the list. We see a ton of nests here, which is very true because that's actually why Maiasaura is so important. Because of Egg Mountain. Egg Mountain is this huge nesting site with a ton of fossilized nests with fossilized eggshells and fossilized young Maiasaura with fossilized adults. This shows that Maiasaura had like sort of communal nesting sites where they would lay their eggs together. And what's really cool about that is that there's actually young Maiasaura of different ages, which means that they would hang around for a little bit with their parents after they had already hatched. This is very important because this recontextualized how we viewed dinosaur behavior for a very long time. It was believed that dinosaurs would abandon their young shortly after they had hatched, and there wasn't a lot of like parenting that was involved. This showed that there was some parenting involved in at least some species of dinosaurs. It encouraged us to rethink how we viewed some dinosaur parenting behaviors. Now, to be fair though, technically Maiasaura wasn't the first one discovered with evidence of parenting behavior. Oviraptor was, but unfortunately, Oviraptor was a case of mistaken identity. It was found on top of its eggs, but it was assumed that its eggs were Protoceratops eggs. So it was labeled egg thief because it was thought that it was actually trying to steal those eggs when in reality it was actually brooding, similar to modern day birds. So technically, Oviraptor is the first that was discovered, but Maiasaura was the first to actually be established and observed. And it wasn't a misconception that these Maiasauras were just stealing eggs, poor Oviraptor. But it's a good start, and actually the nests are accurate too because they would make these sort of dirt nests. Those are that's what's preserved on Egg Mountain. It's very cool stuff. So that's a good start. Next up, we have Dinosaur Planet, and we actually have Buck and Blaze, two named Maiasaura that we follow in this. No nests in this one, but we do see a herd, and a herd is actually very likely for Maiasaura. Obviously, mostly because of the communal nesting sites. It's very likely that Maiasaura would get together and form these pretty large herds. In fact, it's estimated that some herds could reach up to 10,000 individuals, which is just insane to think about. That's a lot of Maiasaura to see. This herd is, of course, not 10,000 individuals, but it still looks pretty cool to see these animals walking around in that sort of way. Buck and Blaze are the ones that we mostly follow. They are younger Maiasaura with very skinny legs. Like these guys, they skip leg day like son of a gun. That is a multi-ton animal right there. I mean, adult Maiasaura can reach a weight of around 4 metric tons. Of course, Buck and Blaze are not going to be that heavy, but still, look at that. Ouch. The head looks pretty decent, although the beak extension looks kind of strange and a little bit separated from the rest of the animal's face. But it is still something that Maiasaura did have, and the whole body proportions seem to be pretty decent as well. They are constantly hunted by the Daspletosaurus group, which Daspletosaurus would have likely hunted Maiasaura from time to time. Daspletosaurus did live in the same time and place. I figured I'd mention that. I don't know why. But it's certainly a fine depiction. It's just those legs are very strange to me. But after that, we have the Land Before Time. I think that this is Maiasaura. The Land Before Time wiki calls it Mother Maiasaura, so I'm going to say that it's a Maiasaura. She shows up in a very fitting episode. It's the Ozzy and Strut eggs episode, because she has eggs, so that certainly makes a lot of sense for Maiasaura. It doesn't really match up skeletally to Maiasaura, but I don't think you would expect it to because it's Land Before Time and they have a different art style entirely. But it's still cool that is present here. I don't think I ever mentioned what Maiasaura translates to. Maiasaura translates to good mother lizard, and it was actually given the name Sora instead of Saurus because Sora is technically like the feminine version of that for a reptile. They really wanted to highlight the fact that it was like a good mother reptile, so they were giving it like Sora instead of Saurus, and I think that's very cool. Next up is Go Diego Go. We actually have what I believe is a special called the Great Dinosaur Rescue. I remember seeing this when I was younger. Actually, I think I had it on VHS if I remember properly. And this Maiasaura depiction actually reminds me a lot more of like very old sort of retro Edmontosaurus depictions, back when most Edmontosaurus depictions were called Anatotitan or Trachodon. It really does have a duckbill. Hadrosaurs are often called duck-billed dinosaurs when they kind of don't really have duck bills. I mean, sure, like most skulls that you see of Edmontosaurus, it certainly does look like a duck bill, but most of them are not preserved with this sort of beak extension that it has towards the end of it that kind of like goes downward a little bit and makes it very, very different from a duck bill. Maiasaura very much did not have a duckbill-like face. It was a lot more blocky, as we saw in the beginning. And that's certainly not something you'd see here. Of course, it is a different art style, so you probably wouldn't expect it to look too close, I suppose. It's just a little bit unfortunate. I think I'd prefer to see it a little bit more blocky and more true to what Maiasaura looked like. They also do have pretty long necks, which is very, very interesting to see. But it's certainly a fine depiction. It's for a child show, so, it's certainly fine. We have another children's show right here with Dinosaur Train. The skull shape is actually way closer, and it does have this sort of very interesting crest-like structure in between its eyes. It's pretty thin, which is pretty typical for Dinosaur Train depictions in general, and we do have some young Maiasaura with like the more reduced proportions, larger eyes, and things like that. It's a pretty fine depiction. I like the striping on it, and is a lot closer in the head. Next up is Dinosaur King, and this looks pretty cool. I really like the colors on this one. You can actually see like these tall neural spines that it has on its back. That's something that hadrosaurs do typically have. Although, of course, the animal wouldn't have been this shrink wrapped. Dinosaur King does typically shrink wrap its animals. The baby Maiasaura also looks really good. It's got those proper proportions that you would expect from a baby Maiasaura. It's also really great to see this Maiasaura fight back. I prefer seeing hadrosaurs fight back, like especially in the fact that she uses her head to fight like Chomp or to completely decimate Terry. I mean, look at this clip. I love it. That's awesome. But yeah, she does have that structure in the middle of her head, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, could have been used for headbutting and whatnot. Possibly something that hints at their social behaviors, more of their social behaviors. It's a good depiction, though. I really do like the colors; those are very fitting for Maiasaura. There's also Dino Dana. This also looks really good, actually. Like the head shape looks pretty much spot on. The whole body shape looks really spot on, and seeing it square up against another Tyrannosaurus also looks really cool. Especially in the fact that it's kind of like going on its hind limbs. Of course, it being a hadrosaur means that it would likely spend most of its time like on all fours in a quadrupedal stance, but it would be able to rear up on its hind limbs, and it's actually likely that it would be able to run on its hind limbs. This is a good depiction, though. It's really interesting to see it go up against the T-Rex here, though, because it's like the Maiasaura has like very out there colors, like very purple and yellow, and then the T-Rex is a lot more grounded. Like those are colors that you would expect for, an animal. I just thought that was interesting. Next up is Life on Our Planet, and probably no surprise, but this is my favorite depiction of Maiasaura. First of all, we get to see a huge herd of them, which is so cool to see. The CGI looks fantastic, and their model looks great. This is probably the most up-to-date model that we've seen on screen so far, and everything about it is just perfect. Like, look at that squared head with that crest-like structure in between the eyes, the tall neural spines going down its back, even with little tiny spines on top of it. They even gave it the hoof-like structure, which is something that has been found on Edmontosaurus. We haven't found it for Maiasaura, but there is a good chance that Maiasaura did have it. Most people will depict it without that, though, such as Halongood. They opted to give it like individual like toes or individual hooves instead of like one large hoof-like structure. But I do really like seeing it here. I think it looks really good. The nests also look great. Again, they're made out of the earth around them. And the babies also look really good. The Maiasaura is also shown feeding its young. That's also likely. When Maiasauras were born, it's shown, or when they hatch rather, it's shown that they actually have like very worn down teeth. So they can't really do much eating on their own. So this whole like the Maiasaura actually like grinding up the food on its own, and then she feeds her young. That's very likely. It's also shown that young Maiasaura couldn't even walk like after they hatched. So they were pretty reliant on their mother for at least a small amount of time. Oh, and also the necks are very beefy. I really like that. I love seeing hadrosaurs with beefy necks because hadrosaurs did have beefy necks, so it looks really cool. But Life on Our Planet is my favorite depiction of this. I think that they just really knocked it out of the park with this depiction. It looks so good. We'll go ahead and move on to the video games, and we'll start off with the Jurassic franchise. So first of all, we have Jurassic Park 3 Park Builder. This interesting looking fella with a very long neck that's very thin, kind of like a salmon coloration, and the shape of the head looks pretty good. And she is over her nest, which is great. It's just she kind of looks funny, kind of looks strange. I don't know. And now in Jurassic World Evolution 2, I really love the way that they look in here because I think that they did a really good job at capturing the likeness of Maiasaura. That skull shape is pretty good. It's got the beak extension. It has the beak extension down here. It's got the very interesting sort of crest-like structure on on its eyebrow. Essentially, it's like a giant eyebrow. Especially when you look at it from the side, it looks pretty dang good. The whole body looks really good. It has those tall sort of spines going on, as a lot of hadrosaurs do. And just the whole proportions, they all look really good. I'm like, that was loud. Holy moly. But they look really good, and then, seeing them walk around in a giant herd certainly is very cool. But it is one of my favorite designs in the game. I think that Frontier did a fantastic job at designing them. Because just a lot about them is very reminiscent to Maiasaura. Like, if I were to point one thing out, maybe the neck is a little bit too thin, but even that's really not too big of a thing because it's really not too thin overall. Like, it's a good design. It's a very good design. Good job, Frontier. I like it. I like it. The good mother lizard or reptile looks very good right here. Jurassic World Alive has a very good depiction as well. I mean, you basically have everything that you could ever need in a Maiasaura depiction. Shape of the head? Check. Crest structure in between the eyes? Check. Huge, bulky body? Check. Awesome striping that seems to be a little bit common in more recent Maiasaura depictions? Check, check, check. Very awesome. I love it. I think Jurassic World Alive did a very good job. Next up is the Isle, and I figured we can look at it through the creature preview as we can get like a good look at its growth. Because of, obviously that's been like a whole like big focus of this video. So the baby looks pretty good. It looks quite a bit like you would expect a baby Maiasaura to look with the way that its skull is shaped. It certainly looks a lot cuter. It has like the larger eyes and everything. And the whole proportions seem pretty good in general. And then it grows up and it kind of grows into its adult proportions. And that also just looks really good. The shape of the skull looks fantastic. The way that it sort of is kind of blocky in the snout and kind of dips down right here. Has that really interesting extension down here. It also does have the very interesting structure over its eyes, really, although it's not portrayed as being connected as some other portrayals have had it. They also did opt to give it more so like the individual toes instead of the large hoof-like structure that we've seen in other portrayals, that is mostly based off of the Edmontosaurus. But all around, it's a very good design, and it's a lot of fun to play. I have played it once before in a live on TikTok, and it was a lot of fun to run around as Maiasaura. It's a really cool dinosaur to have in your dinosaur survival game. There's also fossil fighters, and she has like a little crown. I think that's pretty cool. It's probably like a little bit of a hint of her name. Again, more so of like a pink coloration, and she has like some music notes on her. It's a very good design, and I quite like it. Okay, so recently on my Discord server, I made a new channel where people can submit different depictions of the specific creature that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming many interpretations of. And so as a result, I did get quite a few Maiasaura depictions that people would like me to mention in this video. And while I'm probably not going to mention them all, there's a few that I certainly wanted to, such as the Weird and Wild Creatures Maiasaura. You need to see this. Look at that. That is like that is an interesting angle for the Maiasaura, and it just Ooh, I mean, it's not too incredibly accurate, all things considered. It's lacking that beak extension. Like they kind of opted for more of like the duck bill, which is of course a little bit outdated, but it does have the sort of crest-like structure in between the eyes. Very cool, vibrant colors as well. I mean, even the first lines, back to the first thing I said, the first lines say Maiasaura had a bill like a duck, which I mean, that's not entirely true, but it ran in herds like buffalo and cared for its young like birds. That is true. That is like I had to mention this one. I had to. There was also quite a few like sort of honorable mentions. Like there's a few books that Maiasaura appears in. Of course, there's the Dinotopia, which always has amazing art. This Maiasaura looks really good as it's with its young. The head looks pretty much spot on. It shows up in the Jurassic Park novel. Here's a little illustration of that, which looks pretty good. And in the second Primitive War book, which of course, Primitive War is freaking awesome. So I believe it's actually showing up in the second bestiary, which is really cool. I actually talked about the first bestiary. And so, I recommend checking that out, but I'm very excited to see it. But those are some of the Maiasaura depictions that we have in media, and I thought that these were overall pretty sound. Like I liked quite a few of these. There are some misses here, of course, which is to be expected, but overall we got the idea of Maiasaura pretty good. It was a dinosaur that cared for its young, at least for a little bit. They traveled in herds. They had a squared snout with a weird structure in between its eyes, and it's just an awesome hadrosaur, one that deserves way more attention. Oh, I almost forgot. There might be a chance that it shows up in Jurassic World Rebirth. I don't think that's likely now. There's a good chance that it was replaced with Parasaurolophus and it was supposed to be the corpse, but I can at least like kind of mention the toy. Here's like the Rebirth toy for it, which actually looks really good. The head shape is pretty much spot on. It's got a structure in between its eyes. The body proportions look pretty good, and it has some really cool colors. And it makes noises. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like dinosaur related content, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you on board. Thank you so much to all my patrons and my channel members. You guys are all helping me out tremendously. And if you want to help support me, of course, the links for those are down below. But until next time, thank you so much for watching and have an awesome day.